we've completed most of the basic functionality within our app, such as the ability to change the dice face images on pressing the roll button, or having new dice face images show up as soon as the app loads up, we want to explore another cool feature. We want to tap into the motion detectors in the iPhone to be able to detect when a user has shaken their phone and then changing the dice faces programmatically. Now, how do we do this? Well, let's see if we can figure it out. Whenever you're miffed about how to implement a certain functionality, the first protocol I recommend is heading over to Google and searching for the functionality that you want. So in our case, we want to be able to detect the shake motion, for example. And after our main query, it's usually a good idea to add the keywords Apple and documentation. This is just so that we can narrow down and focus our search to the relevant information inside Apple's documentation. And the first result that you'll get back is often the most relevant part of the Apple documentation that relates to what you're trying to do. Now, whereas on the other hand, if you try to go through it through the Apple developer website and search their documentation directly, so for example, detecting shake motion, then the search algorithm is not quite as good as Google's, and you get a lot of things that are actually unrelated to what it is that you're trying to find. Now, of course, try out different ways of getting to information that you need, but this is just my personal recommendation, as I find that it's usually the easiest way of arriving at the most relevant piece of information. Okay, so we've landed on this method called motion ended. And what it does supposedly is that it tells the receiver that a motion event has ended. So that's exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and implement this in our code. Now, just below our IB action roll button pressed, we're going to make some space for ourselves, and we're going to start typing the name of that method that we found, which was called motion ended. And you can see that as soon as I start typing, Xcode is already coming in and helping me out with the choices that I have. So we've got motion began, which is when the user begins shaking, for example, motion ended when the shaking has stopped, or motion cancelled. Now, in our case, motion ended is actually the one that we want because we don't really want to change the dice mid-shake, right? So let's go ahead and hit enter, and you can see that Xcode has very helpfully typed out a whole bunch of code, which is very long-winded, which means that it's very easy to make typos and spelling mistakes along the way. So it makes a lot of sense when you're writing code in Xcode to try and search through the suggestions and try and hit enter or tab to get Xcode to write all of it out for you. Now inside here, we've got a placeholder, so we can just go ahead and click backspace to delete it. So this method, motion ended, will be triggered automatically when a motion event is detected and it has ended. So in between these curly braces, we can tell our app what it should do when that has happened. So what do we want to happen? Well, we want to change the dice faces. So I'm going to let you guys pause the video here and figure out how to update those dice images. Okay, so that was a pretty simple challenge. We did it twice in the previous lesson, and yes, you basically just have to call update dice images, our beautiful function that we made in the last lesson. So you can see that potentially we have saved ourselves from writing this in 3 places. So 3 times 4 lines, that's 12 lines of code, which we've cut down massively. And it also makes our code look a lot neater and a lot tidier. So let's go ahead and hit run and see if our code actually works. So we already know that upon loading, we get random dice faces because our function update dice images gets called inside view.did_load, or when view gets loaded up. We also know that when we press on the roll button, we get new random dice faces, and they should be different between the left and the right. So none of that functionality is new. However, we've also included now a method that detects a shake motion on the phone, and when it's ended, we also call update dice images to update these dice faces. And now, if I want to test out the shake gesture in my simulator, of course I can't shake my Mac. That would be crazy. So don't do this. Don't do this. Instead, you should go into Hardware and Shake Gesture, and it will simulate shaking the iPhone simulator. One thing to note for those of you guys who are testing out this app, you will have noticed that this app doesn't yet look very good when I, for example, turn it into landscape, or when I run it on one of the larger iPhone Plus sizes. And this is because we haven't set up any rules for how the user interface elements should be displayed. In a future module, we're going to dive deep into auto layout and learn about how to make our app look beautiful on every screen size and orientation. So don't worry about that. In this module, we introduced a lot of new programming concepts, and it's far more important to focus on those for now. And so there we go. We've created a Las Vegas Dice Shaker app that responds to both taps and shake. And in the process, we learned how to link up our design with our code. We learned about how to create IB outlets and IB actions. And then we learned about variables, constants, and data types. We touched upon randomization and creating arrays. And finally, we reorganized our code, created functions, and tapped into the motion detectors. So this is our first step venturing towards app programming. And in the coming apps and the coming modules, we're going to be looking at how to call APIs from the web, how to set up our own cloud database, and much, much more. So I hope you guys had fun while learning Swift and making the Dicey app. In the next module, we're going to get you to fly solo. You're going to be creating a Magic 8-Ball app that gives you all of life's answers when you ask it questions. And the idea is to challenge you guys on what you've already learned, what you've already harnessed, and try to see if you've really understood it and if you can apply it yourself. So that's all from me for now, and I'll see you on the next module when we build a Magic 8-Ball. See you there.